The White House's rationale for bailing out up to $20,000 in student loan debt relies on a series of claims that many economists crying foul. President Biden made a number of claims yesterday, and the White House has continued to respond to skepticism about the expense, appropriateness, implications, and even the legality of this plan over the past 24 hours. Joining me now to help separate the truth from the spin is Dr. Dave Brat. He's a former member of Congress from Virginia and currently the Dean of Liberty University's School of Law. Dr. Brat, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be on. Great topic. Thanks.
Well, it is a good topic, and we are hoping that you can make us non-economists a little bit smarter today. And there's so many components of this, one of which is just the cost. Like, how much is this going to cost? Who's it going to be paid for by? President Biden, he said that this move is paid for by what his administration has already done. Let's play clip 7, then I want you to respond.
I hear it all the time. How do we pay for it? We pay for it by what we've done. Last year, we cut the deficit by more than $350 billion. This year, we're on track to cut it by more than $1.7 trillion by the end of this fiscal year. The single largest deficit reduction in a single year in the history of America. And the Inflation Reduction Act is going to cut it by another $300 billion over the next decade.
Now, Dr. Brat, that sounds impressive. We have a $1.7 trillion reduction in the federal deficit. Sounds like it's big news. Now, should we be as excited about that as he is? What does that mean about what the deficit actually was?
Don't get too excited. It's kind of like after COVID and you shut down the entire economy for a while and then fill that gap with federal spending and Federal Reserve monetary stimulus. And then you were at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, but then a few rocks fall down and you get to stand on those little teeny rocks that he's talking about. You're still at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And so, no, none of it's true. You had gigantic in the trillions government spending. And so, only in DC can you get away with that kind of logic, where you've trimmed the deficit. Yeah, because you were down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. You had more deficit spending than the world has ever seen combined. Yeah. And so next year, you're going to do a little less than awful. That's not a good thing, right? And on the cost of the bill and all this kind of stuff, it's just, nicks by 1,000 wounds at a time. So the government took over the healthcare sector, which is 20% of the economy with Obamacare. The government's now taken over the energy sector, and we had energy independence, and now we're upside down and gas prices are through the roof, and now natural gas is coming up this winter, and the world is seeing a disaster. My friends in Africa, right, got fertilizer problems, energy problems, and they're looking at a famine. 600 million Christians in sub-Saharan Africa that, love us and they want to see us lead and help them. And so, and we haven't even gotten to the education piece. My favorite meme today was I saw the truckers, right, who don't go on to Harvard MBAs in Shakespearean pronoun studies. The truckers are paying for the Harvard linguistic experts for the first few years they're out of school. When you're making less than $250,000 as a couple, we got to repay those loans. And the truckers are the bottom half of the income distribution is paying for the upper half. I mean, it's just logic stood on its head. But, Santa Claus is popular. Free stuff's popular, and the American people got to get over this very bad habit.
Dr. Brat, I think one of my favorite social media responses came from Larry Tribe, who teaches law school at Harvard, and he was expressing how happy he was for his students that they were finally going to see some relief, as if the graduates of Harvard Law School are a special interest group that really need the protection of the federal government. But on this debt and deficit thing, we noted that the deficit has been reduced by $1.7 trillion. But that's different than the federal debt, right? Because you have the debt, which is how much we owe over time, and the deficit is simply what we are adding to the debt every year. Am I understanding that correctly? So when we cut the deficit, it doesn't mean there's no deficit. So we're continuing to add to the debt, right? We're still not living within our means. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, no, that's right. Just everybody in your audience ought to be familiar already with the USA debt clock, right? Go out to that. Every every financial statistic in the world is right there, having to do with debt and deficits. And the debt, is 30 trillion, but the unfunded liabilities with Medicare and Social Security, you'll see all that out there on the U.S. world debt clock. And that's over $100 trillion, right? And the most important, is we're talking about education. Well, I wish education meant the word education, right? If education actually meant education, then U.S. productivity wouldn't be it's been going down for 40 years in a row. Go to Robert Nelson at Northwestern University. He's the world expert on productivity, and in particular, total factor productivity. I did my PhD in economic growth. That's the only thing that causes long-run economic growth. So you can add capital and you can add human capital and education. But if you don't have total factor productivity growth, nothing happens in your economy. That thing has been going down for 40 years straight. And last week, the productivity stats came out for the U.S. all-time lows, right? So if education was truly educating our kids and our young scholars into productive skills like technology, computer science, IT, information systems, engineering, data analytics, data analysis, those are the skills. The Chinese and the Indians haven't missed this memo, right? And the United States missed the memo. And we're really harming our kids and the next generation. And it's intentional. I hate to report, right? A lot of folks on the left think the U.S. And the U.S. economy and free markets are the bad guys. We fed the world. We set up the entire post-World War II liberal Bretton Woods order that gave China and India the incomes that have risen from $1,000 per head to $15,000. We fed the world. We've done amazing stuff. And instead of getting a thank you, we're digging our own ditch.
Dr. Brat, I want to get now into the cost of what this is and whether we can even know that. White House policy advisor Susan Rice was asked about that cost. Yep. Here's this exchange. Let's play clip one.
How much will this cost? How much will Americans have to pay on this price tag overall?
Well, that remains to be determined, and it will be a function of what percentage of eligible borrowers actually take up this opportunity. If 43 million borrowers take it up, that'll be different than if 50% of those 43 million take it up.
If it is 43 million, if I could just follow on, if the full number of eligible borrowers do take advantage of the program, what would the cost be?
I can't give you that off the top of my head.
Is there a reason she can't do that math? If I'm wrong about that, wouldn't that be 43 million by 10,000?
Yeah, they don't want to give you the big number, right? It's just the DC swamp talk over and over and over that's got us into this current predicament, right? So all of this, by the way, with inflation at 9% down to maybe 8.7%, and people are talking about, it's down. It's not down. It's at all-time 40-year highs. So inflation is 8.5%. Trimming, it's 8.5% off your income, right? That's the price of all the goods you buy. And it hits the poor disproportionately, right? The poor have to spend every nickel they got on gasoline and food at the supermarket. And so it really hits the poor hard. And then to do this, right, this is stimulative, right? It's more federal government spending. At the same time, you have inflation. And so the whole thing it's just a mental, intellectual disaster.
Well, we're going to get a bit more into that because the White House has in fact claimed that there could be some deflationary pressure resulted from this. Let's play clip 2.
The way we see it is a number of independent experts from Moody's analysts to the Economic Policy Institute agree that restarting student loan payments around the same time we provide targeted relief will not have any meaningful effect on inflation. That's because collecting more payments by ending the moratorium will mean borrowers will pull back on spending in other areas. It will have a deflationary effect.
So, Dr. Brat, I think she's saying that repaying student loans again, which they haven't been doing for years, will have a deflationary effect, which will counterbalance the inflationary effect of the loan forgiveness / bailout project. Is that their admission that, in fact, forgiving all these loans will, in fact, have an inflationary effect?
Well, they're making the claim. I mean, there was so much gobbledygook in there. They embarrassed George Orwell, right? Look up Animal Farm and 1984 and all that kind of thing. Yeah, no, the truth claims coming from that podium are just stunning, right? And I hate to say this, but unfortunately, most mainstream economists who come out of Ivy League schools, right, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Chicago, Chicago's kind of an exception, but they're all funded by federal grants, right? So the silence coming from economists on this is stunning as well. And history is not going to look kindly on the economic profession. It's going to be shown, right? I'll just give you one stunning example today. Goldman Sachs, for example, has the GDP forecast at 2% for this year. We're shrinking at 1 to 1.5% for the first 6 months. And so how do you get positive +2 from the smartest guys in the world, right? Fannie Mae today has the growth rate this year more like at 0 and next year at negative. What do they know that Goldman Sachs doesn't know? They know about the housing market. And of course, Goldman knows that. But what I'm getting at is, well, some of you Christians are just the greatest people on earth, but the only problem is sometimes they're so innocent, they don't get how evil the world is. And so they're missing that elections happen in November, and anyone dependent on government spending is, and I hate to say it, this includes all the financial houses in the world, Goldman, JP Morgan, Chase. Go look at their forecasts. And a year ago, they forecasts were growing at 4%. Well, sorry, guys, you're wrong. And the Federal Reserve Bank economists, they got floors and floors of them. I'm friends with tons of them, right? They got floors and floors of PhD, MIT, smartest guys in the world. They really are smart. So they know what they're doing. But they're reporting that we're going to grow this year still. The evidence is in. We're at negative 1.5%. We're shrinking. And so they're cheerleading, the Federal Reserve's cheerleading. They have no credibility, right? In the 2008 financial crisis, they asked Bernanke, how's the real estate market? Right before it crashed, he said, oh, it's great, strong as ever been. Yeah. And so folks out there, you got to do your own homework. You got to do your own numbers. You got to educate your own kids. I'm sorry, but just go back 10 or 20 years and Google, Milton Friedman or John Taylor at Stanford on monetary theory, the Taylor rule. And it's incumbent on us. The Christian community has to know and have intellectual and moral confidence in what we do on a daily basis.
Well, Dr. Brat,
so let's do it.
Yeah. About the effect on the economy, there's a lot of people who actually think this is going to be really good for the economy. Senator Elizabeth Warren is one of them. She's, of course, been a proponent of this for a very long time. Yeah. She's defending the policy, saying it's going to create economic growth. Let's play clip 4.
Because of student loan debt, there are many people who don't move out of their mama's basement, who can't save up money to buy a home, who don't start small businesses, who don't start a family. You relieve the debt burden some for those people, and we have more economic activity. In other words, canceling student loan debt is good for the people whose debt is canceled, but it is also good for our economy and the rest of America.
Dr. Brat, it does make sense that if you have less debt, you can do other things with your money. Does that mean this is going to be good for the economy?
Nope. But I was an economist for 20 years in a previous life. And there's famous folks. You can go look them up. But roughly speaking, SOLs, national test scores, K-12 test scores in math, science, whatever, are like this. Flatline for 30 years. On the other hand, total federal spending, state spending on education is like this, straight up like a hockey stick. So the total spending on education at the federal, state, and local level has done nothing to improve test scores. And as I was saying before, productivity is actually going down because as we're doing nothing, the Chinese and the Indians are very smart people and they're doing something. And so she's totally wrong on everything she said. And I'm happy to debate her on that topic anywhere, anytime.
Well, we would certainly love to facilitate that. I'm not sure she would accept the invitation, but if she does, I'm here for it, and I'll bring some popcorn.
Good.
Dr.
Good.
Brat, we are grateful for your time as always. I mean, we're trying to make heads or tails of all of this because really it does seem that there's so much smoke. There's so much politics. Everything's about the midterms, it seems.
Right.
And most of us don't have PhDs in economics, so we're confused, but we're a little less confused today. Grateful for your time today. Thanks for being with us.
God bless you, brother. God bless everybody out there. Thank you.